Think about the banana you ate for breakfast today. Now ask yourself honestly, what makes me different from this banana?
Well, banana's usually dead by the time I get it. I don't think I have that much cellulose in me.
What makes me different from a banana?
Well, I'm not bright yellow, and I don't have a peel.
Proportionally speaking, I have a lower potassium content than banana.
From a banana, I have more water in me.
Nucleic acids.
Welcome Bio15ers to the video on nucleic acids. Nucleic acid represents a small but very important group of biomolecules, and like we've started with the other videos, we can see the foods that have an abundance of these kinds of biomolecules in them. Nucleic acids are found in seeds and beans and grains. The kernel of where the plant structure begins is where we're going to see an abundance of nucleic acids in these foods. And these nucleic acids are important because they're going to store, direct, and express genetic information. So nucleic acids are the molecules that you inherit from your parents. And there are two kinds of nucleic acids, DNA and RNA. And the figure shows a representation of these molecules in ribbon form. We see DNA on the left, deoxyribonucleic acid, and it has two strands, and on the right we see RNA or ribonucleic acid. We usually use the acronym for the molecules rather than saying the proper name because it's just so much more simpler and it's easier to distinguish between the two molecules that way. But DNA is the molecule of life. It's going to be found in every cell of your body, every cell that contains a nucleus, and you can see that here in the figure. DNA is organized into units that are called chromosomes. It's a folded structure of DNA. And then within the DNA molecule itself, you can see that it's broken up into the inheritable units that are referred to as genes. So a gene is a discrete unit of inheritance, and its sequence provides information to build a protein. And that's what DNA does. It makes proteins. So DNA is inherited from an organism's parents. It provides directions for making proteins as well as replicating itself. So DNA can replicate itself, and it directs the cell by synthesizing proteins that it's going to need to do cellular work. DNA does not build proteins directly. It works with RNA to form the eventual proteins. So DNA gets transcribed to RNA. Both of these are nucleic acids, but then RNA gets translated into proteins, and we know from watching the video that proteins are made up of units called amino acid. So DNA directs the sequence of amino acids for that protein. Each nucleic acid is made up of individual molecule groups called nucleotides, and in the figure we're seeing a representation of adenine, which is one of the nucleotides found in nucleic acids. Whether we're talking about adenine or any other nucleotide, it will always contain three separate parts. The first is a sugar, the second is a phosphate group, and then the third is the nitrogen base. And it's the nitrogen base that's going to differ between the nucleotides. So here's the nucleotide completely formed with its sugar, phosphate, and nitrogen base. And again, it's the base that makes each nucleotide different from each other. So here we have DNA and RNA again. And for DNA, we can see the nitrogen bases that form the nucleotides for DNA. So there's cytosine, guanine, adenine, and thymine. For RNA, we have cytosine, guanine, and adenine as well, but a different nucleotide is in the structure of RNA, and that is uracil. To form a nucleic acid polymer, nucleotides have to bond to each other through dehydration synthesis reaction. When the phosphate of one nucleotide bonds to the sugar of a next, notice that it alternates between phosphate sugar, phosphate sugar, phosphate sugar, all along the length of this backbone. It's where the monomer units bond to each other covalently. Then, protruding from that backbone are the nitrogen bases. And this is going to be important because it's the nitrogen bases that are going to bring the two strands of DNA to each other. Here's another representation of DNA, a very simplified version where we see the sugar phosphate backbone in alternating color representing the phosphate and the sugar group. And again, we see the nitrogen base portion of that nucleotide coming off of the backbone. So here are two DNA nucleic acid strands that have now bonded to each other through those nitrogen bases. Notice that A always binds to T and C always binds to G. These are the base pairing rules that form DNA. The kind of bond that is between these base pairs is not a covalent bond. Remember, the dots tell us that it is a hydrogen bond. And so the hydrogen bond is what holds the two strands of the nucleic acid DNA molecule to each other. Each strand has a particular sequence of nucleotides. So here's the first strand, and if we were to follow it down its length, we would see these are the nucleotides that are coming off of this particular strand. And then on the other side of the molecule is the hydrogen bonded nucleic acid, and it will have the opposite or base pairing sequence to the one we just mentioned. So take a look. So A to T, C to G, and so forth. They base pair with each other through hydrogen bondings to form the double helix that is so characteristic of a DNA molecule. Now DNA is made up of genes, and the DNA molecule consists of millions of base pairs and consequently many, many genes. And these genes are the units that we inherit that drive the production of specific proteins in ourselves and generally in biological organisms. But let's take our cells, thinking about the fact that DNA is made up of genes. Those DNA genetic units get transcribed to RNA and then get translated to protein. So at the very basic level, when you look at yourself or members of your family, you're looking at the proteins that were produced by DNA. The color of your hair, the formation and structure of your hair, skin and eyes, the shape of your nose and smile and body, all of these things are brought about by the genes in your DNA that lead to the specific proteins that give you a particular look. And since you inherit those same genes from your family, you end up looking alike. Now these figures are of me and my family. My dad is up in the top left-hand corner with his mom and dad. My grandfather came from Italy. My grandmother came from Mexico. In the center is my family with my sister in the figure there. And then some other figures of me. Notice how my dad and I look a whole lot alike, and my sister and my mom look more alike. But those proteins and the coloring and the shape of our hair and all of that comes out of the DNA. If you look at the bottom picture, that's my 50th birthday, and the figure in the middle of my dad, our hair and our hairlines are very, very similar, and it's because we share the same genes. So ta-ta for now. Take a look at the proteins that you and your family share, and remember that they all started in your DNA.